Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Just want to close the loop on this shutdown business before we turn our attention to Obamacare. I've mentioned before that President Obama has sent his goons to try to shut down Mount Vernon. Mount Vernon is not owned by the federal government. There's not one single dollar of taxpayer money that goes to fund the operations at Mount Vernon. It is owned by the Mount Vernon Ladies Association. That does not stop Obama from sending his goons down there to put up barricades in front of the parking lot. He's got barricades in the bus turnaround, so buses can't even go in there and let people off to go visit Mount Vernon. This is just petty. It's juvenile, and it is childish. I mentioned you got numerous hiking and biking trails throughout the greater D.C. area that require zero maintenance. They require zero in the way of patrols. They have been closed down. You know, and this thing just boggles my mind. The National Park Service has stationed officers. I mentioned this last time, but I just can't get over this. Has stationed officers along the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal. This is a 184-mile canal, runs from D.C. to Cumberland, Maryland. And they got officers stationed there to make sure nobody uses the bike paths. You can't jog on it. You can't walk on it. You can't run on it. You can't ride your bike on it. And this is a park that never needs to be maintained. You don't have patrols on this place normally. So the reality is they're spending more money to shut things down than they would have spent to leave them open. That's what makes it clear that this is petty, and it's motivated by some mean, cruel, vindictive spirit. This is President Obama trying to inflict as much pain on ordinary Americans as he possibly can, even when he has no justification for doing it. There's a tiny park in D.C. where children play on fake turtles. They've closed that down. The mothers just move the barricades aside and take their kids in anyway. But Lincoln Park in D.C., where a lot of Democratic senators like to go for lunch or whatever, they haven't shut that thing down. So if Democratic senators are using it, they leave it open. If moms want to have their kids play on fake turtles, we got to shut that down. We can't afford that. And again, it's just a reminder that these memorials and monuments were not shut down back in 1996. For instance, there's a Pearl Harbor Memorial. This is over in Hawaii. But you had World War II veterans that kept that thing open. They said, fine, if you can't pay somebody to come and run this thing, we will be happy to keep it open ourselves. And the Republican National Committee, by the way, has offered to pay to keep the World War II Memorial open. So far, that has not been received. And there are 8 mounted cops now, 8 cops on horseback that are out there trying to keep veterans from getting to the World War II Memorial. You know, NBC News the other night, we had Representative Steve Palazzo on yesterday from Mississippi. He's the one that opened the barricade so the vets could go in on Monday or Tuesday, whatever day that was. NBC did a completely bogus story last night talking about these vets going to the memorial, and he said they were escorted to the memorial by a bipartisan group. That's flat wrong. There was not a single solitary Democrat among the escorts. You had Michelle Bachmann, you had Steve Palazzo, you had my Congressman Alan Nunnally. Another shout out to him for doing this. You had Greg Harper from Mississippi, Senator Roger Wicker. A shout out to my Senator Roger Wicker for doing this. You had Louis Gohmert from Texas was down there. Not a single Democrat among them. In fact, the only member of the Mississippi delegation, these were Mississippi veterans, the only member of the Mississippi delegation that was not there was the lone Democrat, Benny Thompson, by name. And don't forget that these park police that were called there to block the memorial from these veterans were called off of furlough. They were on furlough. They had been shut down. Obama said, we got to get these people back because this memorial could be stampeded by these 91-year-old juvenile delinquents who were going to trash the place in their wheelchairs. So we got to call these guys off of furlough to come, and it was to guard the memorial. Guard it from whom? Guard it from 91-year-old war veterans in wheelchairs. You know, and there's no entrance to that place. There's no gate. There's no nothing. You can access it from anywhere. You can access it from the street, access it from the park. It is just absolutely crazy. And by the way, you know, this is an important thing to understand. Do not miss the significance of this. Their 7 officials, we got 8 guys on horseback, 7 officials were dispatched yesterday morning. 7 police were sent to the World War II Memorial to set up a ring of barricades, put police tape across the whole thing and the whole business. Now listen to me. There were 2 more security guards in place at the World War II Memorial than Obama sent to guard the consulate in Benghazi. President Obama had more people guarding the World War II Memorial against veterans. He had more guards to stop veterans in the District of Columbia than he sent to Libya to stop Muslims in Benghazi. So that gives you some idea of where this president's priorities are. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this, and then we'll take some more phone calls, 888-589-8840. There is this private national park, only one in the country. It is Claude Colonial Farm. It's living history. This is a family-friendly site. According to its website, it, quote, authentically portrays the life of an 18th century American family building a life on the nearer edges of civilized society. And it is the only national park in the country that is run by a nonprofit organization. So it's privately funded, privately owned, and privately run anyway. It's not received a penny from the federal government since 1980, but it was shut down on Monday. Here is Anna Eberly, the managing director of the Claude Colonial Farm. She said this: for the first time in 40 years, the National Park Service has finally succeeded in closing the farm down to the public. In previous budget dramas, the farm has always been exempted since the NPS, National Park Service, provides no staff or resources to operate the farm. We were not even informed of this until midday Monday, in spite of their managers having our email addresses and cell numbers. So apparently the National Park Service just shows up out of the blue and shuts them down. The first casualty of this arbitrary action was the McLean Chamber of Commerce, who were having a large annual event at the pavilions on Tuesday evening. The NPS sent the park police over to remove the pavilion's staff. Remember, these are paid by private funds, to remove the staff and chamber volunteers from the property while they were trying to set up for the event. You do have to wonder about the wisdom of an organization that would use staff they don't have the money to pay to evict visitors from a park site that operates without costing them any money. In other words, it cost them more money to shut this place down than it would to keep it open. It's just perverse what's going on here. The spokesman for the NPS, Carol Bradley Johnson, she's the one who played the soundbite first hour. We're not going to promise not to arrest vets next week. She says, it's not something we enjoy doing, but it's important that we protect and preserve our monuments for future generations. Protect them from whom? And this is what Eberly said. This is utter burp. We have operated the farm successfully for 32 years after the NPS cut the farm from its budget in 1980. And listen, this is very important to understand. They were cut out of the federal budget. Private donations stepped up, and the thing is running better and more smoothly than it ever did when it was funded by the taxpayers. That ought to be a lesson in there somewhere. You don't have to have government funds to run everything. If it meets a need, if it services people, they're going to wind up paying for it out of their own pocket. You won't have to fleece the taxpayers for $1. We operated for 32 years after it was cut from the budget in 1980. We are fully staffed, prepared to open today, but there are barricades at the pavilions and entrance to the farm, and if you were to park on the grass and visit on your own, you run the risk of being arrested. Of course, that will cost the NPS staff salaries to police the farm against intruders, while leaving it open will cost them nothing. Now listen to this. In all the years I have worked with the National Park Service, first as a volunteer for 6 years in Richmond, where I grew up, then as an NPS employee at the farm for 8 very long years, now enjoyably as a managing director for the last 32 years, I have never worked with a more arrogant, arbitrary, and vindictive group representing the National Park Service. And those words could be used to describe this entire shutdown: arrogant, arbitrary, and vindictive. All right, let's go to the phones. Let's grab a call from Michael, Austin, Texas. Michael, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Well, thank you, Brian, for allowing me aboard. A couple of things. First of all, the Osama phones for Obamacare. What people don't seem to realize that these phones are activated and reside on government servers, which means that the government can monitor and glean information at will with no, without any requests whatsoever. So what these people don't realize, they're opening up all their privacy wide open if they get one of these Osama phones. The second thing I want to mention is that a lot of these veterans were POWs. Now, if they arrest these POWs that we had that served for us and protected us, they're likely to get flashbacks of when they were incarcerated in the gulags and with the Japanese and such. I mean, it's just horrifying to think what they might have to relive inside a jail cell if they were to be arrested.
Yeah. Well, yeah, go ahead.
No, that's pretty much. Those two things were just killing me. I had to give those to you.
Well, and I think, and I appreciate the call. And I think the reality is, as much as President Obama would like to arrest these vets, haul them off to jail, handcuff them to a cot, I mean, I think he'd be absolutely fine doing that. He realizes that politically there's no possible way he could do that. The American public simply would not stand for it. So they've had to find some way to let this go on. But I still cannot get over the fact that he's shutting down privately owned national parks that don't take a dollar of taxpayer money. He's spending more money to shut things down than it would cost him to keep them open. So it's clearly vindictive, clearly petty. And there were more guards. He sent more guards to the mall to stop veterans than he sent to Benghazi to stop Muslims, which gives you an indication of his priorities. The cemetery at Normandy, 9,387 military dead there. That has been shut down by Obama. There is a parks director in Wisconsin said, we're not shutting down. I don't care what the National Park Service says. We're staying open. Most of the money we get from state taxpayers, we're keeping this thing open. We don't care what D.C. tells us to do. Back in 2.